All right, here we go. This is going to be a great event. We're going to learn so much today. Get your pen and pads ready. We have Cicely Everson with us today. She is an integrative functional nutritionist and practitioner. She's an herbalist. She's going to make us understand, what is this all about? How does the gut have everything to do with everything? So our immune system, we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about our sleep. We're going to talk about our mood, and our stress resilience, which I know we all could use a little help with that one. So, Cicely, thank you so much for joining me here today. This is going to be great. I know such great information. So, why are we hearing this? The gut is the motherboard. Why is the gut the central place for every function, basically, in the body?
Well, thanks for me on, Dale. Well, I think what you said, the word, the motherboard, that's a really good way to think of it. I think if we can really get into a place where we start to look at that as the focal point, then we can start understanding how all of the other little things affect our gut, because our gut is literally like the core of our health. We talk about our core, working our abs. It's the core for a reason, because it is the central part of really what controls how well we feel. And I think there's just so much information showing about how it not only affects those things that you mentioned, but how our gut is our second brain and communicates with our brain just as much, if not more, than our brain communicates with the rest of our body. So, I mean, when it comes to things, I think when people think about gut health and how it impacts their health, the first thing that they probably think about is like a local symptom or a sign. Like, well, I don't have any gut problems. I don't feel bad. I don't have, abdominal pain or cramping, or I don't have food allergies, which a lot of people do have sensitivities, but they just don't realize it. But it goes so far beyond what we feel in our stomach. So you could have, an extreme sensitivity to something and not really have much discomfort in your stomach because of the fact that our gut talks to our brain, because it affects our mood and our sleep. And, you mentioned stress. More than like 80% of doctors' visits are stress or due to stress related complaints. So when you really think about that, like if we were less stressed, we'd be saving a ton of money on visits to the doctor. And, as an economy, it would just cost a whole lot less to care for us. And there would be more money involved, there when we really need it. So stress is an important factor. We've talked before about how our adrenal glands come into play and how different foods affect our hormones and our adrenal glands. And this happens because, foods that we eat, especially inflammatory foods like dairy, gluten, some of the main culprits that we've heard about, that most of us have heard about by now, they really do affect us on a psychological level. They do affect our hormones, and they actually can kind of have similar effects like opiates, like where it makes you want to continue eating it over and over. And as we eat more of the same kind of food that's inflammatory, then what does it do? It causes inflammation locally in the gut, which then is going to obviously stress the gut, but also the immune system. And so, most of our immune system lives in our gut, close to 80% of our immune system cells. And so, if that's the case, then whatever we are doing to our gut, we're also doing to our immune system. So the main way to stay well, is to really target our gut health.
So it's interesting that you were saying that we won't necessarily feel like an upset in our stomach, but we have these other symptoms. So how, like sleep, for example, can you talk about that and how the gut balance or imbalance affects our sleep?
Yeah, sure. Well, serotonin, which is one of our neurotransmitters that a lot of us have heard of, it's like the good mood hormone, right? It's a neurotransmitter, which means that it's a brain chemical, but 95% of that is made in our gut, right inside of our gut. So, that's just goes to show it's another thing that affects another part of our body. And serotonin not only affects our mood, but also affects our sleep. And so we hear about it being hormone, but it affects our sleep just as much. And so if our gut is impaired, if that gut function is impaired, then so are those hormones or any other nutrients that are typically manufactured there. And then it depletes them, and then they can't communicate with the rest of the body the way that they should. So that can directly impact our sleep. Just right off the top, because if your body is impaired and not producing what it needs to, then your sleep can suffer from that. And sometimes it's also a matter of stress that plays a role in the sleep as well, feeling wired and tired, and it all sort of plays together. But not having that serotonin being manufactured properly can definitely impact your sleep. It can cause insomnia, or just cause you to have a poor quality of sleep, which is just as bad as not getting sleep.
Right. So interesting because you never would think that. Like, there's so many people that have sleep issues. Like, I don't know what the percentage is, but a lot of people. And then it's kind of like this snowball effect. When you don't have enough sleep, then you can't really think clearly. Your focus is off. Your immune system also is affected by that. So,
Yeah.
so let's talk about mood. Like, how does the gut affect our mood? Which people like, this is new science that's coming out about how those neurotransmitters, again, that are produced in the gut, how that affects your mood and just overall, joy, being able to feel happy.
Right. Well, just that there are good mood foods and natural foods that we can eat to boost our mood, there are also foods that contribute to the opposite of that. And so if we're eating some of these inflammatory foods or not digesting well, or if we have infections in the gut, or just generally not addressing the gut at all, then we can definitely affect the mood, because number one, you've got the lack of serotonin that's likely being produced there. But then you also have your hormones that play into your mood as well. So your adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys, that's like our stress response center, and they control how well we respond to stress. And your body can't really perceive the difference between a good stress and a bad stress. So if we're constantly tapping into a stressful situation that the body perceives as stress, then those adrenal glands will pump out hormones accordingly, stress hormones. And if you're constantly encountering stress, then your body's constantly pumping out these hormones. And that alone can contribute to mood problems. And because it's all interconnected, if you have impaired gut function, that can contribute to your mood because of the lack of serotonin, but it can also contribute to a poor mood because of your hormones being affected and just because of them being out of balance. And then that doesn't even include like infections that we can get just from not having enough good bacteria, from not having enough probiotics in the gut. That can affect our mood just as much, because when we have an imbalance and we have more of the bad guys, the bad bacteria, the viral strains, the parasites, when we have those outweighing the good guys, now you have a compromised gut. And so that can affect the mood because of that whole gut brain relationship.
So can you talk about, and I want to go into like the specific things that you can do to really restore and heal the gut. But first, can you just talk a little bit about um, does sleep affect, well, actually, cortisol levels, which is our stress hormone, if you can talk about what that does if you have that, you're living in that state of fight or flight, but also how do those stress hormones affect the sleep and the energy also. I wanted to talk about energy.
Right. Yeah. So there is something known as cortisol curve, and we get our first dose of cortisol, if you will, usually in the morning, maybe about 6, 7 a.m. And we want our cortisol levels in the morning to be nice and high, because that's the only time we get it during the day. So we get our cortisol, and throughout the day, by about mid morning, it drops. By about afternoon, it drops. And then in the evening, it's at its lowest level. But the problem is, if we're encountering stressful situations and the adrenal glands are producing more and more cortisol, then we no longer have this curve. We can have patterns that are very erratic. And when you have those spikes and drops in cortisol, that's when you also can see shifts in the mood. So you can go from being stable to very, very irritable to, and in kids, the irritability can show in different ways. Maybe we think they're just tired, or maybe we think they're just having a bad day, or just not getting their way, or throwing a tantrum. But oftentimes those stress levels are erratic, and they're not having that constant, like that fluid curve because of the impaired gut function and because of the stress. And when you feel stress, especially with kids, they can't always express how they're
Mm.
feeling, right? Their stressors look different from ours sometimes. Like they can be afraid of something and not be able to express that. If you have young children and they have a bad dream, they can be frightened and not even be able to explain it. But then they also have societal stresses, like interacting with other kids. Right now, we know that's been really difficult, or not being able to see certain family members, like always being at home or not having many changes to their routine. These are just different examples, but that stress is going to impair digestion. It's going to shut it down. Because when we get stressed, and you mentioned fight or flight, the first thing that happens is our digestive system kind of comes to a halt. And this is great if you're running from something in order to save your life. But if you tap into that same process over and over and over again, repeatedly, before the body has a chance to reset and repair, then you are in this cycle where the cortisol levels can really fluctuate. And I've seen situations like on lab tests where people's cortisol levels are super high at times when they shouldn't be. But over time, I've also seen where the cortisol levels are so depleted because they've been in that stage for so long that now the adrenal glands can no longer keep up and the cortisol levels are very, very low. So being too high, being too low can really produce a lot of the same effects. It's called imbalance either way, whether it's too high or too low. And so the
Right.
goal is to really be balanced. And the best way to do that is to target your gut health through cleansing, putting in those good probiotics, making sure you're digesting well, but also making sure you're eliminating too. Even for kids, like as parents, we need to be a little more aware of how often our kids are having bowel movements and eliminating, because if not, those are toxins. That's waste that's staying in the body. And that
Right.
blood that circulates in the bowels is the same blood that circulates in the brain. It's all the same blood. So if we are holding on to those waste products, then we can actually like auto intoxicate ourselves.
Wow. That's amazing. Okay, so let's talk about the specific protocol that you recommend, and why. So this is like the study here.
Yeah, when it comes to, stress, anxiety, depression, helping to correct immune function, the fundamental set is really amazing because of the diversity and the strains. So one of the things that I encourage people to look for when you're looking for a specific probiotic or specific gut product, you want to look for diversity. So we've got trillions of strains in our gut. You don't want to take just one strain as your only type of supplement to address your gut function. So, what I like about it is because it does have the fundamental specifically does have a variety of strains. And, like, for example, the L rhamnosus, that's one that comes with a lot of benefits, but also helps with infection. So, if there is any kind of gut infection that hasn't been identified or detected, or maybe we're talking about our kids and we don't know what's going on with their gut. Well, how would we know? We don't know how their stomach feels. So H. pylori is one of those that L. rhamnosus can help to decrease. Also been shown to help reduce anxiety and depression and increase immune function. And when we talk about immunity, it's always about balance. And when it comes to immune function, because that's where our immune cells live, we have to make sure that we are not constantly throwing things at our gut to inflame it. Because if we inflame it, we're also inflaming our immune system. And if we get into a state of autoimmunity, which many, many people are in, then you have a problem, because then your immune system is not only targeting what it thinks are foreign invaders, but now it's also damaging its own healthy tissue. And then that becomes an issue where you can have muscle wasting, breakdown of proteins, malabsorption, where you're not really absorbing things. So the probiotics, specifically in fundamentals, really help to restore that. I know the bifidobacterium longum, that particular strain, also helps to reduce like respiratory tract infections. Immune system, right? That's where it lives. Again, helps to reduce the anxiety, and also has been shown that particular strain to help reduce schizophrenia signs. And it doesn't mean that, this is going to completely turn that around if you have a child or if you're, diagnosed with that. But anything that we can do to put the gut back in the right direction is a win, right? And so that particular strain also helps to inhibit tumors in the colon and liver specifically. So keeping the gut clean is essential. And you can clean the gut with probiotics. There are many different ways that you can detox or clean the gut, but you can do it with probiotics. I love doing the fundamentals on an empty stomach. I love the way it tastes. I love that it can have like a flushing effect without it interrupting my day. It's not like a laxative, but it can help really balance out that upper, GI part of our digestive system and really keep that balanced. And then the other probiotic strain, I think that's the Lactobacillus helveticus. Okay, well, yeah, that's really easy to say. That one is really interesting because it helps to produce what's known as butyric acid, or butyrate, and it's actually a type of short chain fatty acid. So we hear about like omega 3s and things like that, but butyric acid specifically, it gives your colon almost all of the energy that it needs. About 70% of the energy that your colon cells need, butyric acid provides. And this particular probiotic strain helps our body produce more of that. So that can be helpful for IBS, for irritable bowel syndrome, for Crohn's colitis. And it's a gentle way of getting, because it helps to produce more fiber. So it's a gentle way of getting that fiber that's not going to irritate the intestinal lining, as opposed to like just taking a straight up fiber supplement, which can hurt, can be uncomfortable for people who already have like a compromised gut.
Wow, interesting. And that strain specifically would be also to create energy in the body.
Absolutely. Helps to create energy, also helps to prevent the respiratory tract infections. So again, helping with the immune system, helps to reduce anxiety and depression, and then also even helping to offset skin issues and dermatitis. Because what a lot of people don't realize is that your your digestive system is directly connected to your skin's health. So your liver correlates with your skin health, but also your gut function. So if you have an impaired gut, let me put it this way: if you have dermatitis or eczema or a chronic skin condition, even psoriasis. With psoriasis, your immune system is definitely involved because that's on the autoimmune spectrum. But if you have a skin condition, your gut probably needs some work, because we have along our intestinal lining, we have what's called villi, and they're like little hairs. If you can imagine like bristles on a brush. They're little hairs and they're very, very compact together. But when we eat things that destroy the villi, or when we're in a constant state of stress, those villi start to separate, and it becomes fewer and fewer of them. And now you can see there's an open space, and this is what happens in the gut. And then undigested food particles, toxins have a chance to leak through, which is known as leaky gut. What we want is for the intestinal villi to be like this, so nothing can leak through. They serve as like a brush to brush those things off, sweep them through the gut. But when they start to get compromised and we have fewer of them, then we don't have that defense mechanism. And when things leak through the gut, they get into the bloodstream, and then we have the skin stuff happening. And the thing with the skin is that it can also be immune related too, like I mentioned with the psoriasis. So that's why, like, these 4 things that we're covering today, the sleep, mood, immune function, and stress, they all work together. They all work together. We want to calm our brains, because that also is going to make us feel more anxiety, especially if we have skin issues. And a lot of people can have flare-ups just from being stressed. But all of this really starts from the gut.
Wow. Amazing. Wow. It all goes back to the gut, right? The motherboard. That's what it's all about.
I know it seems complex, but at the end of the day, you want to cleanse the gut. You want to protect it with things that are going to constantly help to keep the microbiome diverse. So cleanse, diversify,
and eliminate.
And eliminate.
And eliminate those 3 things. Fantastic. Wow. This was so good. I'm going to see if there's any questions in the comments. I don't see questions. I see this is amazing. This is great. We need to keep our immune system at peak performance. Absolutely. more than ever right now, for sure. So it's not about just going to the health food store and picking any probiotic. It's basically
Yeah.
knowing that the probiotic is doing what it says. It's been clinically studied to
What
do what it says.
you want to look for it. If you're not sure, call the company. Like I've used the fundamentals. Look at the studies that have been done. When you go on the Amare website, the studies are like, you know, just so many. There's so many things that you can look at to really educate yourself, and read about what these strains do, read about the studies, read about what they found. And the way I look at it is it's going to cost you, if you don't do anything to address your gut. It's going to cost you a whole lot more than it would cost you to try a new probiotic or a new product.
Right.
And everyone's body responds differently. Some people, and depending on your starting point, some people are starting with minor damage, some people are starting with a lot of damage. And if you're someone who's starting with, an impaired gut plus maybe some of the more mental emotional aspects with the anxiety and depression, give yourself grace, be patient with yourself, and be intentional around what you're taking. Like, it's so easy for people to just pop pills and take supplements, but when you're taking herbal supplements and these kinds of products, be intentional. Like, take the time to connect, know why you're taking it, be grateful for what it's going to do for your body, and just setting that intention and connecting with it mentally can change the effect that you have. It can
Right.
definitely change the effect that the product has on your body. So just
And give
take a little
yourself time as well. I mean, because it's
more.
not something that happened quickly. This is years and years.
And here's the thing, if it's taken decades to accumulate all the junk that we have in our bodies, we're
Mhm.
not going to get it overnight. You may start feeling better in 2 days, which is phenomenal, but it doesn't mean that you stop taking it. You stick with it. Your body needs time to really regain muscle memory so it can be retrained and know how it's really supposed to function. So you have to keep at it. I take a probiotic daily, so I'd love to have people take it as a maintenance product. In the beginning, maybe people want to take it more therapeutically. You can follow the package directions, call the company if you want more direction, or work with a practitioner, but I personally take supplements like this therapeutically, which means I might double the dose, for a couple of weeks, note how I'm feeling, note any changes. And then when you're feeling better or your symptoms resolve or decrease, then you can go back to like a maintenance dose. So, I encourage people, advocate for yourself, ask questions all the time, work with somebody, it doesn't have to be me, but work with someone who understands how the body functions from a holistic perspective, and whoever is sharing this video or invited you to this event, work with them. If you're already getting products from them, keep them in the loop with how you're feeling, because they won't know unless you share that with them, and so just a couple of tips.
Self-care, is how you take your power back. I totally believe that. Oh, we're okay? Yes. Is it okay for a child to double up on the fundamentals? That's a question that just came
I
in.
I, I
It's,
would have a 4-year old, and I would give him 2 doses a day. But again, use your personal judgment. If you're not sure, always ask a professional. But that's me and what I would personally do. And you can also you can also research what the upper limit intakes are. An upper limit intake is what the FDA has established. I'm not saying that this information is something that I always go by, because I don't, but I have to tell you this. The upper limit intake is what the FDA deems as like the highest amount that is safe to consume. So, for example, if, you know, 10,000 units of vitamin D, this is just an example, were the upper limit intake daily, then maybe you can double your dose as long as it doesn't exceed that. So it's just a way to use it as a guide. But I definitely would use it with my child. I would double up.
you are using the children's fundamentals
I
with
am.
this. Yes. Yes.
But yes.
Great. Okay, awesome. So, Cicely, this was amazing. Thank you so much. It really is amazing how everything really just goes back to the gut. Everything works together. Like the body, you can't separate, compartmentalize, like the brain, the gut, the heart. Everything is all connected.
Exactly.
So Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was so good. And we're going to do more of these and really get into deep dive specifics around those four topics of mood, sleep, stress, and immune function. But this is really where to begin, is just start with those basic diversity in probiotics, prebiotics, and phytobiotics.